So just like what I did recently with The Flash Season 5 and what it needed to do to improve in its next season, and by the way, if you haven't seen that video yet, check it out in the cards above. Of course I have to do something similar for Arrow, and I feel even somewhat more so, as it will be its last season. So, they definitely have to do some things to score big points and go out with a big bang. So this may not be as much of things Arrow needs to do to improve next season, but things Arrow in general will likely do and probably should go about doing before it ends in its last season. So initially I want to point out how some things are still a little bit up in the air when discussing this topic, because Oliver went off with the Monitor to prepare for the impending crisis, and Team Arrow is left behind in Star City protecting it from whoever, which I assume to be the remnants of the Ninth Circle and your average criminals, of course. But this springboards me into my first point of speculation for Season 8, which I would like to see, but deep down, I don't think will happen, and that is that we still need a Team Arrow dynamic that includes Oliver next season at some point before Crisis, despite him as of right now having disappeared with the Monitor. At the same time, as I said, we don't really know how this is going to go. Some people are even speculating that we might not even see Oliver with, the other Team Arrow members until the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, which, obviously makes sense as everyone will be fighting alongside each other, but I really want to see Oliver back in the Arrow Cave. For whatever reason, with Team Arrow before that, even if it's just a couple of episodes before Crisis begins, so we can have some form of that team dynamic in the last season. But unfortunately, I do feel like this, just might not happen, as, what he's doing with the Monitor is very important. I mean, extremely important even, and for him to just pop in a couple of times here and there to just get updates or something on Team Arrow just seems very unlikely. It just seems more likely that they could go hand in hand with Oliver and Monitor scenes, Team Arrow and Star City scenes, and then flash forward future scenes for each episode up until Crisis arrives in December. Also guys, more evidence for as to why we won't see Oliver in present day with Team Arrow when the seasons start in October is because we can't forget that Oliver got collected by the Monitor as of when the other shows will be starting their seasons, time-lapsing over that usual, in-between time jump gap the shows get each year. So as a result, Oliver was collected when Mia was already born, as we know there was a bit of a time skip there, and in doing so has been collected about the time when The Flash Season 6 starts, Batwoman and Supergirl and everything else starts. So it just seems incredibly likely to me that most of Oliver's scenes before Crisis will be segregated from the usual team dynamic we've become accustomed to seeing in previous seasons. But regardless, Arrow Season 8 will feel different for this reason, with some people even using the term for Arrow Season 7 being its final true season, with Season 8 likely being very different in comparison for these reasons. Maybe it is just wishful thinking here, but as I mentioned, I would just like him to return a tad early, even if it's just an episode or two before Crisis, maybe episode 6, so we can have some Star City present day wrap up with the team and Oliver. But we can't forget how the vigilantes need to be outlawed in this final season because of the future. So ultimately, Oliver going back to Star City before Crisis remains very up in the air from where I'm standing. It would also just seem a bit backwards for him to prepare with the Monitor, then just hop back into the Arrow Cave to wait for the Anti-Monitor to arrive. I just can't see that happening. Crisis starts as of when the Monitor picks Oliver up. Like, that's even been said by Stephen Amell himself, and it makes sense. And it ends as of, well, when it's over. So I just can't imagine pauses in preparation for such an existential threat. This is perhaps why even, like, Season 7's ending with the Arrow Cave lights switching off and, the zoom into Oliver's face really could have signified that it was his more or less last time there, bringing us the unofficial true ending to the show. We can't forget that this show is primarily about Oliver Queen too. I mean, who could have guessed? But, obviously Season 8's focal point being its last season should obviously be heavily focused on the Green Arrow, Oliver Queen. And this adds more thought to spending time with him if he's with the Monitor, so more scenes like that. Now, as for Oliver's scenes with the Monitor, which is, likely a thing, as we've already discussed, of course it would be awesome to definitely see this. Like, even with my point earlier of wanting to see Oliver somehow in some way with the other Team Arrow members, just in some capacity before the Crisis event, it would be so cool, and I I'm not gonna lie about that, to see him recruit other heroes from other Earths, testing them in similar ways like he did Barry in earlier seasons to see if they're good enough, heroic enough, and up to the task of saving the multiverse. Oliver, as we know, is the veteran vigilante of the Arrowverse. Well, excluding the original vigilante, which is Batman, of course, much to Oliver's disagreement, but he couldn't be more perfect for recruiting heroic talent across different worlds and doing it in a much less destructive way the Monitor chose to go about doing it, like, freaking destroying Earths just to see if they could prove themselves. So ultimately here, if we are going to get this is going to be very exciting just to even imagine Oliver visiting other heroes, perhaps having some difficulty convincing some, and perhaps even ones we really thought wouldn't even be a part of the Crisis crossover actually appearing. There is actually so much potential in this, so yeah, I'm all for this. Another thing that will likely happen in Arrow Season 8, and obviously needs to, but basically kinda goes without saying, is returning characters, meaning even dead ones. I mean, this has already happened at several points throughout Arrow, and I have no doubt that we will get this in some capacity, even if that means, the final couple of episodes of Arrow Season 8, with Oliver's death being exactly that, a more or less farewell dreamscapey sequence, similar to how Oliver was in the Dominator Mindscape, if you guys remember, when he was saying goodbye to Laurel Lance. But we also saw other characters such as Moira Queen there. So of course, I have no doubt we will see characters like that again, and they'll have to get people like that back in the show. Perhaps even Tommy Merlin and others. However, this could just be reserved for a twist on the Paradise Dimension Oliver will be residing in after his quote-unquote death, where we see Felicity join him through the breach portal roughly 2 decades later in the future. Although I wouldn't be surprised if we actually didn't get to see his life within the Paradise Dimension. The show could be keeping that heavenly afterlife element you can never return from once entered, a mysterious factor of the Arrowverse. Also, honestly, I'm not so sure how much I like the idea of Oliver joining another dimension where he can live on, where other people like his mother, father, and Tommy, etc., are actually there, but, they're dead. I mean, this is kind of confusing because the Monitor did say to Oliver, "I have watched you die," and even goes on to say, "I cannot prevent his passing." But at the same time, does he? Does he die? Felicity willingly walks through to this place alive, so will they iron out if it's literally a heaven-like dimension or not? I mean, maybe the reason you can't return, like how the Monitor warned Felicity, as I just said, because it's like walking into the arms of death. So in doing so, walking in, it renders you not a part of the living, but living on in the essence of spirit, perhaps. And, that is what the Monitor could do for Oliver, albeit being unable to prevent his passing and the physical side of things at the same time. Maybe that's all that meant. That being said, at the same time, guys, the Monitor is a being with godlike powers, as we all know, so maybe he can, in Oliver's dying moments, keep his being going on. But if this dimension is a place where that can happen, and people of the living, like Felicity, can go too, I'm just not so sure if it should have the unbelievable specters like Tommy Merlin and his parents there also. I mean, this is just me personally, but I just feel like that wouldn't be so real for Oliver, unless the Monitor can all of a sudden resurrect the dead. I mean, either way, I don't need a super nitpicky explanation here, but I do kind of want some explanation that makes sense into what this Paradise Dimension exactly entails, and how for Oliver and others like Felicity once she's entered it. We could also see present day team members reflect and pay tribute to Oliver Queen, which, is also a given, I feel, with perhaps even characters like Manu Bennett, Slade Wilson joining to say goodbye and pay his respects, which I would love. I know there's stuff about Deathstroke or whatever, but surely they can get him in to do that. I mean, as well as Thea, of course, it'd be great to see her, and I don't see how they couldn't do that. So I think we're all expecting Bronze Tiger to pass away so that John Diggle can raise his son, Connor Hawke, as we all know from the Flash Forward scenes, who we now know is even a series regular in Season 8, which just implies how many Flash Forward scenes we're going to get into that 20+ year future next season. It's just going to be interesting to even think about if Bronze Tiger passes away before Crisis. I mean, let me know as of when you're hearing this right now in the comments section. I mean, I think it would be fitting if he did die during Crisis, but then again, with our scenes with Team Arrow, Season 8 does need to set up the reasoning behind the outlawed vigilantes of the future, which you can only assume happens this season. So, perhaps Bronze Tiger could, be the first casualty of that, driving our other characters like Dinah and Roy into hiding, knowing that Star City is very serious about vigilantes being outlawed. Also, guys, I think they do have to get Felicity in somehow. Yes and no that she has left the show, but that could just mean that obviously in comparison to if she hadn't, then she would obviously be in practically all of the episodes in present day. But even though she's left, it doesn't mean that she can't be squeezed in with the right scheduling. So I know they've said that if they can do it, they will. So I'd like to remain optimistic that she will somehow feature in it one way or another. I mean, it's Arrow's last season. So say what you will about Felicity, but at the end of the day, guys, she's been in this show from the beginning. We definitely need an appearance in her from some form or another before this show ends forever. As for the flash forward scenes, guys, I wasn't even really gonna put them in this video, but I feel as though I should because they're here now. There isn't really anything I particularly want or need from them because I'm just not really all that interested in them. I guess if it had to boil down to an answer, we'll say that of course they need to set up Mia as the savior of Star City in the future. They've kind of already done that. We even had the Monitor saying to Felicity when he was collecting all of that, I'm not here to bring harm to you or your daughter. Trust me, the world needs her. So evidently she is a pivotal character of the future and has a part to play in the timeline. So I guess more cool setup for that is welcome. I don't have any want or need of a spin-off show with these characters personally, but I do enjoy the action sequences they've given us with Mia and others. So more of that and more of this, sure. If anything, it'd be even cooler now that Mia has somewhat embraced her father's legacy towards the end of last season. They were only going to turn it up a notch next season, which, gives me more hope for those scenes during those episodes, which will probably ultimately conclude with a new Team Arrow protecting a future Star City consisting of Connor Hawke, William, Zoe, and Mia primarily. Lastly, guys, I just want the Star City scenes with Team Arrow to be good, like with who they're up against. I think no matter what, like we've already been over at the core of this video, it won't be the best thing ever, as we've only got 10 episodes. But as we've already discussed, there needs to be something there for them to do, which ultimately connects them to their vigilante outlawed status. All we know right now is that the Ninth Circle is still around. I mean, they even had orders out for Oliver's death or something at the end of the season. So maybe the Ninth Circle will help smear the Vigilante's name in present day Star City, which ultimately leads to their ruined reputation and the rise of the Glades in the future. Either way, no matter how the somewhat antagonist of season 8 will be handled, I'm just looking forward to the more Team Arrow action with the addition of a couple of members, which I assume will be Roy returning from his whatever he said about figuring some things out, which he closed with saying as of the finale. But, we can't forget how he still needs to go to Lian Yu, so that's why I'm assuming that we might see him again. And of course, more scenes with our Black Siren turned into Black Canary, Earth to Laurel. So Vigilantes, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you couldn't tell right now, this is past Boba. I am away right now, just like all the other videos you may have seen, or maybe this is one of the first that's going up. I have no idea. But let me know what you thought about the video in general. Did you agree with some of the things that I wanted to see in Arrow Season 8, or things that I might think, or definitely think will happen, or definitely think should happen from my perspective? Not that everything will, but I would also just love to hear what you think. Do you agree with anything I said? Do you think the Paradise Dimension will go down the way I think they need to explain it, or do you have a whole different idea in mind with things like that anyway? Just all those kind of things. I would just love to know your wants and needs for Arrow Season 8. But other than that, everyone, I'm uploading every couple of days or so at the minute, maybe live streaming in between. But if you want to talk with me more directly, even when I'm away on holiday, you can do so in my Discord server in the links down below. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all that good stuff. But thank you so much for watching, guys. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you Vigilantes in the next video. Goodbye.